Yo, what's happening, world? My name's Raheem Flowers. I'm gonna go outside the box a little bit with this video because it's pretty rare for me to make videos based off the topic of hip hop, and I want to do something that hits home a bit more when it comes to Chicago. So, I heard a brother goes by the name Bo Deal. You might have seen him on those Freestyle Fridays back in the 2000s on BET. And then there's another woman, there's a sister named Chella, rapper, entrepreneur, and both of them have a podcast together known as the Straight Uncut. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, they were speaking on a subject recently in regards to Chicago legends. And that's not a word that I use loosely, because in order for somebody to be a legend, they have to have undeniable universal impact, like Tupac. I have more than my fair share of critiques on Tupac, from his, I'm just gonna keep it real, from his simping with his mother, Afeni Shakur, from just the way that he carried himself and how impulsive he tended to be, and which ultimately led to his untimely demise down there in Vegas. But I'm not even going to get into all that stuff with Tupac right now. This is not about him because he's from Cali, or technically New York. But back to Chicago. So, I had my disagreements with the brother, Bo, and Chella, when they said things like the Brat wasn't a legend, and just how they have this gauge of what being a legend is. And I understand the context that they were using it in had to do with more of being a street legend. And I understand that hip hop and the streets are always going to be intertwined with one another, because hip hop came from the streets. Even at one point, the Zulu Nation was a gang, and the Zulu Nation is one of the main foundations of hip hop. Now, I understand that there were certain things, namely with the whole African Bambaataa and dudes like Hassan Campbell being one of his, basically like, he was one of his victims, you could say. But yeah, hip hop came from the streets. It came from the streets of the Bronx. Was formed in the 70s, I believe 1973, and now you got what you got today. I mean, a lot of hip hop artists, especially in the 90s, was prevalent in the streets. That's what a lot of it was rooted on, talking about what people go through, and then the NWA being like at the frontier of all that. But yeah, I don't see it. Like, a lot of people, the whole drill movement. One of the only few people who I can genuinely say is a legend from that movement, Chief Keef, being like one of the only few. I'm not calling these niggas legends. I'm not calling the majority of them legends. Number one, they lack the longevity. Number two, they lack the impact. You could talk about either in the streets, or you could talk about in terms of the realms of music. Look, I'm not a street dude, but I know people who are close to me. And whether you're a street dude or not, you're still gonna hear those names emerge. Let me give you an example, because a lot of people like to say this dude's name in the video, Young Pappy. I don't call Pappy by his name, I call him by his birth name, Shaquan. Because I know people who personally know him. I grew up with people who were his best friends. I went to school with his sister. And the guy that you all know as Young Pappy was just a little kid. He was just a little kid being like one of these other knuckleheaded niggas that you see in the streets. He would go by the name TFG for those familiar with him musically, but if you know him outside of music, he was part of a gangster disciple faction known as the L-Dub. For anybody from Chicago, you know I'm not BSing. But anywho, I'm not going to call somebody like that a legend simply because he had an untimely demise. No, like, I could personally say that dude isn't a legend. Personally, not like everybody likes to just call you and crown you a legend automatically off your death. They did the same thing. See, it made me think about what Wack 100 was saying about Nipsey. I agreed on certain things that he said. I disagreed with him with Nipsey because Nipsey actually had some sort of impact. And he had the longevity. Nipsey's been in the game since what, 08? And he died this year in 2019. He did things that a lot of artists didn't do, like, you know, the amount of mixtapes, albums, the project that he sold, which he sold for about $100, and he sold about 1,000. What's 100? 100 times 1,000 is a lot of money. That's at least 100. That's at least 100 grand. And I mean, you know, the things that he did in the streets. Now, we could talk about what Nipsey represented, the whole intelligent gangster, intelligent thug, and people just following along and being aroused by that persona, but that's another argument to make. The point I'm trying to make is, when you call somebody a legend, there's less subjectivity in that term. It's more objective. It doesn't matter how you feel. As much as I used to despise Lil Wayne, I would be a fool to say that he wasn't a legend just because of how much I didn't like him and how parasitic I found him to hip hop. He still is a legend at the end of the day. It doesn't matter. He's made an immense amount of impact that nobody could take away in this era. Whether we talk about these lean sipping dudes and, you know, unfortunately a brother who just passed away like Juice WRLD, I'm sure he was influenced by Lil Wayne too. Like almost every rapper you could think of in this generation was either influenced by Kanye, Lil Wayne, or Lil B. Kanye, Lil Wayne, or Lil B. I'll even add Soulja Boy to the mix because of the whole impact that he's had on the internet and how people utilize these platforms today. Even Soulja Boy's a legend, but I'm not calling somebody a legend just because you died. Who said that? I'm pretty sure Biggie said that. You ain't nobody until somebody kills you. Unfortunately, you know, there was truth to that. I don't agree with Wack either when he said that Biggie wasn't a legend. Biggie made enough impact and he was in the game enough to have longevity and be called a legend, and then when he died, to be regarded as such, objectively speaking. But most of these dudes who died, L.A. Capone, Young Pappy, Fredo Santana, I could see why somebody would call him that because he was one of the fronts. He was actually one of the first main ones at the forefront when it came to that drill movement. So I could see that, but I'm not calling the majority of those artists from Chicago in this generation legends. The only ones who I can genuinely call would have to be Chief Keef. It would have to be G Herbo or Lil Herb. Like, these dudes been in the game long enough and they've created such an impact. I have my own personal critiques of them. Every last one of these artists that I named, whether I like them or not. And I know what they represent. They represent something super dangerous, super detrimental. I always call them domestic terrorists, but it's not about whether they're domestic terrorists about. It's about whether the impact was positive or negative. Fact remains, they did something that led or fueled this generation to move forward. They created a sound. Like the Young Chops of the world created a sound. Zach TV, he was another dude. I definitely consider Zach a legend. And the crazy part is, I know somebody, a lady friend of mine, who literally witnessed Zach TV's death. Like, was literally on the scene when he was being chased down in a car and got murdered. But yeah, I'm not calling most of these dudes legends. Like Zach, rest in peace to that brother. He's definitely a legend, especially when it comes to vloggers, especially when it comes to being a content creator and actually putting his name out there. I think when he was moving very recklessly. I don't think Zach should have been immersing himself around that type of dark energy, that type of demonic spirit that a lot of these dudes who are about that life contain. But nonetheless, he did create an impact. So rest in peace to that brother. And shout out to everybody doing their thing and people who are striving to become legendary and not just being a dime in a dozen and just trying to live for the moment. Shout out to people actually trying to build a legacy and do things that would ultimately benefit their community. So that's what I gotta say to that. I got Bo on Instagram. I doubt he would ever want to actually talk about this, but if he did want to talk about this, I'd be more than open to dialoguing with him or Chella about it on Instagram or wherever. So that's what I'm gonna say about that. Peace out. One love.